Hello, this is Laren with Fantasy Grounds Academy. Today I'm going to again delve into the character wizard. This time we're going to create a very basic, simple character, probably build like a fighter type. Hopefully this will help you a little bit in wrapping your mind around how to use the character wizard. This also assumes that you have some content or that you are connected to a host or a game master that has shared their content with you. So in my library, if I go to modules, I have most of the core books enabled so that I'm able to take on some choices and some different builds if I need to. This would also assume that you have some of these modules activated and shared by your GM if you are not the host. In this case, I am the host, I have the content, I'm going to start building. So the first step is the stat generation. You don't have to do this first, but this is what it's presented to you. Right at the moment, it is saying that the ability scores have been generated. And this is simply because it's starting off with the standard array. So it's 15, 14, 13, 12, 10, and 8. If you want to do a point buy system, you can select that, and you have a total of 27 up here on the top right. You can decide which stats you want to boost up, and it will keep track of those points. Or if you prefer, you can roll. So there's a manual dice roll or automatic dice roll, and it will give you the results, and it will actually put them in the order that it was given. Or you can actually do a manual entry where you just select this and type in the numbers you want. I'm going to keep the dice roll that I have here because I want to keep the actual results that I got, which are pretty good. So I'll just leave that at that. The next thing is to change the scores if you need to. So right now it's 12, 17, 13, 12, 13, 14. Then I'm going to move the 17 over with one of these arrows to this particular cell, 13. I'm going to swap out this charisma, the number 14. I'm going to move it all the way over to the dexterity or con area. I think that'll be good for con. And then I'll swap out the 13 for the dex and put the con here. So I got 12 on intelligence, 12 on wisdom, 13 charisma. So I'm going to swap those two. So we're going to have a 13 wisdom. So those are just the basic stats. And those are something that I rolled automatically. So this is the 4d6 drop the lowest method. So that's one way that you can select or create stats depending on what you're trying to build. So hopefully that makes a little sense to you. The next step is going to be to select the race. So if I come over here to the top right, I'm going to select race. And as you can see, I have a plethora of different races to build. I think I'm going to build a Furbolg, which is in Volo's Guide to Monsters. So if I pick the Furbolg, that will allow me to select the default select racial modifier. So if I pick default, you're going to get an increase of 2 and the other ability score of increase of 1. Or the other option would be to pick 1 for each stat for 3 different abilities. So that's the Tasha's options. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Tasha's options. And I have 3 choices here. So I can increase any one of these by +1. So definitely strength. I'm definitely going to do dexterity and con. This is a kind of a more of a physical character. I don't see him casting a lot of spells or anything like that. So I went ahead and select those. And once I've done that, those have been updated. So if you look on the right-hand side in your summary, it will show you your updated stats and some of the things you already have. So I have common, giant, elvish, and then in the traits, there's Furbolg Magic, there's the Hidden Step, Powerful Build, Speech or Beast, and Leaf. So these are different traits that you get. And then, of course, the stats are up here, has a race populated up here, so you can kind of keep track of this as you go. I'm just going to put Furbolg Fighter up here because that's basically the type of build I'm going to make. That is just what I'm going to title the character for now, in case I have to save it or come back to it. So that is a way that you can basically start creating your character. The next step is for class. So if you click on class, you can choose which class you want to be. There are different sources here, so I have a lot of different options. I'm going to pick the fighter build. So I click fighter. And initially you get 2 skill proficiencies. So I don't have any skills just yet. So I want to go ahead and pick those. So I'm going to pick athletics and maybe intimidation. So those are some of the skills that you get for being a fighter. So that's my first choices. I don't have any sort of proficiency bonuses or anything yet until I get to 3rd level. So I'll show you how to level up at the end of this. So then here on backgrounds, I get to choose a background for this particular build. So I want to go in and I'm going to pick Gladiator. I always thought that would be a fun build, especially for a Furbolg. You might have started off as a, just as a warrior type and ended up in the fighting arena. Now he gets a tool proficiency for his background and such. I think I want to choose to pick some sort of item that's going to help him. So these are all musical instruments of a sort. So I'm going to pick maybe a drum, a hand drum or something like that. That'll be kind of interesting. So he plays that drum before he goes to battle. I think it gives him a little bit more focus and also helps him with his courage. So he has some proficiencies here from his background and his class already. So those will be added as you build your character. Now I'm going to pick inventory. So what the inventory does is it allows you to choose your starting equipment. So you get your class equipment first. So class choice 4, class choice 1, and then your class choice of 2, depending on, and then 3 is down here. So class choice 1 looks like a different form of armor. So you can do chainmail or leather. I think he's more of a leather kind of guy, so I'm going to go ahead and pick leather, but you could pick chainmail to start with. I think he started with leather. For his second choice, this would be a weapon of some sort. So I can see him wielding something kind of large, or maybe a two-handed sword or something like that. So I think I'm going to go with either a battle axe or a maul. I like the maul idea. So I'm going to grab the maul, which is going to be his first weapon choice. And then for his third class and background choice, I'm going to give him some kind of melee weapon. So probably some hand axes or a bow or something, crossbow or something that he can use ranged. So I think he's more of a natural kind of fighter. I don't see him using very sophisticated things. But I do know that he's a gladiator, so a net might actually be kind of cool. So I'm going to give him a net as he's proficient with that. And then his fifth choice, he can pick a Dungeoneer's pack or an Explorer's pack. So I'll go ahead and grab that. So that gives him some of his exploration stuff. And for his, for his fourth choice here, I think I'm going to get him a dagger because he's going to, yeah, maybe a dagger or some kind of interesting, maybe a whip might be kind of cool. So there's all his different weapons. So he's got some exotic ones. He's got a whip, he has a maul, and then he has a net. So these are kind of like gladiator based. And then his other background choice for a different type of instrument that he can play. I think he can play like a horn. Maybe it's to announce his battles or something like that. So that's just your starting equipment. This isn't your full equipment that you're going to have all time, but this is what you're going to start with. So that gives you that choice, and you can also purchase equipment. So if you want, or if you didn't like your choices, you can reset it at this point. Purchasing equipment allows you to go in and purchase equipment based on the starting amount that you have for your character. So it really depends. Now the next thing is going to be the feats area. So we don't have any feats at this time, but at 4th level, if we want to switch between an ability score increase, or an ASI it's called, or an actual feat, we can do that at that point. So now that we have all that, you can go back and review all of your choices. And once you do that, you can look at your total summary here and make sure that everything is filled out, that you've made all your choices. Sometimes you'll notice that if you make a choice or you double up on something, it'll turn red. So you have to go back to one of these areas to choose your next option or choose something different. So that's kind of what happens if you accidentally choose the same skill. from a different class, like background or class abilities, what happens is that Fantasy Grounds will, the wizard will help you from doubling up on those. When you're doing the drag and drop method, that was something that was hard to avoid if you weren't aware of it and if you were new to the platform. So this kind of helps with that. And this also gives you the chance to make revisions and changes. Let's say you wanted to change your race. You can go back and click on races and select a different race. You might have a couple different options after that, but it allows you to do all these changes before you commit. Once you hit this commit button, though, it saves to the character record, and then it's kind of hard to go back and fix it. So make sure at first level you have at least 4 skills or more. Make sure that all your stat ability score increases are in. Also make sure all your proficiencies and skills and languages and all that stuff are here in the summary. And once you're happy with that, or once you're satisfied, go ahead and hit commit. Once you hit commit, you're going to be taking to the character record, and this is basically what it's going to look like when you're finished for first level. So your level's recorded here. So your fighter 1, Gladiator background, Furbolg race, and then here's all your stats. Hit points are down here, so at first level you get your maximum hit points plus any constitution score bonuses. So I have a +2, so I have 12 altogether. Your skills are going to be on the skills page, already filled out, so you already have an asterisk by those, which means that you're proficient. You have your abilities tab, which has your fighting style, which you need to choose that manually. There's another fighting style option out of Tasha's. Second Wind is another option for your character, which is basically a way to allow you to heal yourself. You have by popular demand for the background, so you get kind of like a popularity thing with the crowd if you're a gladiator. Furbolgs have a little bit of magic, so you have detect magic and disguise self that you can put on your character sheet. So your wisdom is going to be your spellcasting base, so we'll deal with that later. So I'll go ahead and put that aside. Hidden step is another way. So as a bonus action, you can magically turn invisible until the end of your turn. So go ahead and put that aside so we can take a look at that, see if we need to do anything. Powerful build. Basically, you count as one size larger when you determine your carrying capacity and the weight you can push, drag, or lift. So that's a feature that's more or less roleplay. Doesn't really affect too much mechanically, although it does give you the ability to carry more things. And you can push, pull, and drag things a little easier. And then the speech leaf or beast would be for a limited matter of time. You can communicate with beasts and plants. They can understand the meaning of your words, though you don't really have any special ability to understand them in return. You can have advantage on all charisma checks you can when you influence them. So you can communicate with beasts and plants, which is, I think, is really cool. You have a disguise kit that comes over from being a gladiator, so you might wear makeup or a costume. There's the drum. I'm proficient with heavy armor and light armor, martial weapons, medium armor, shields, and simple weapons. So those are all the things that I got from being a gladiator and from being a fighter and such. Now, if you go over to your inventory, all of your starting equipment is already populated here. It really depends on what you chose, but these are all in. And all of your weapons and armor should technically be equipped if it isn't already. You can organize your equipment by simply nesting or taking the name of the container and typing it in under location. So the bedroll, I can type backpack, it'll kind of auto-fill it. Make sure it's spelled exactly like the container so that it will work properly. His costume I'll put in the backpack. His horn that he gets from his background. His leather doesn't get stored, but it is equipped. His maul is equipped. The mess kit I'm going to put in the backpack. The net is going to stay out, probably just attached to his side. He has a pouch, which isn't going to be stored in the backpack. His rations will be in the backpack. The rope is going to be attached to the backpack, so I'm just going to consider that it's in there. I'm going to also put the tinderbox and his torches in the backpack. A water skin is going to be attached to the backpack, and the rest of it is going to just stay out. So the leather and all the weapons are equipped. and they're basically on the outside. They're not really stored inside the backpack or on the backpack. The pouch is questionable. It might be on the side, or you might have it in your backpack. I just leave it out because that's basically where I'm going to store my coins. And then anything else you can add and drag and drop onto your character sheet depending on your game master. So that is basically his equipment. That's how you organize that. If it's a magic item, you can have attunement assigned to it, those sort of things. But this is a first level character, so he doesn't have any magic items, not yet. If you want to add the notes, so in this case, this is going to be a male. I don't know what the height of Furbolg's is, but I imagine it's probably like 7 foot. So I'm just going to put he's 7'3". Probably 285 pounds, something like that. Without knowing the race, I'd have to look it up. Lawful neutral for alignment. This doesn't matter as much, but it does parse off of the good or evil for magic. So it's good to put it in there and not acronyms, so that will help parse the spell. If you want to put together your background, your personality traits, if you go over to your Gladiator background and you open up that description, you scroll to the bottom, those are all the defaults for this particular category. So by popular demand is one of your features. You also get to have a Gladiator routine table, which you can put on your notes. So if you put that on your notes, you can, put a notation there and expand on it later. So I'm going to roll just to see what that looks like. Oh, okay, so he's an actor, so he likes to play around and pretend he's somebody else, or you can roll again if you don't like it. In this case, it says actor again, so I think he's destined to be an actor. Not sure who he acts like, but that's definitely his calling there. And you can probably have more than one. I would, if I was the game master, I would say every 3 levels or every tier, you can add one of these routines. It says 1 to 3, roll on the table. So far he's only rolled 1. So let me try another one. So number 10 is a tumbler. So he's got that routine. So he likes to tumble and do cartwheels and such, kind of cool. And then the next one is a storyteller. So it's very interesting. So this guy, or this person, or Furbolg, has ways to tell stories and such. It's kind of a cool thing. So he's an actor, a tumbler, and a storyteller. Those are some of his routines. So you obviously got acrobatics and performance, so that's kind of cool. You can play off the crowd and that sort of thing. And then you have tables here. So there's personality traits. You can have 1 or 2 of these to start off with. I'm going to roll. So number 8 says, I change my mood or my mind as quickly as I change key in a song. I don't see him doing that. Yep, I guess it wants to be that. So I'm going to go ahead and change that to, and drag and drop either the text from the chat, or you can drag and drop from the table itself. So you just go through systematically and roll for whatever you want, or you can choose them. So here's his honesty thing for his ideals. For the bond, I'm going to go ahead and roll. This is going to say, someone stole my precious instrument and someday I'll get it back. Maybe someone stole his first drum. And then on the last thing is the flaws. So we'll see how he is flawed. So he says, I once satirized a noble who still wants my head. Satirized. It is my mistake that I will likely repeat. Okay, so he's kind of angered a noble or something like that. So that's how you do your background. If you play Adventure League, there's a log sheet where you can actually create your own log for whatever adventure you're using or playing in. So that's an option. And then your actions tab. So the way this is set up now is you can choose your handedness. There's the net, so I just put it as 1 ammo. Here's the whip. The maul is 2-handed, so if you click on this description of the maul, it's going to tell you it's heavy 2-handed. So I'm going to change that to 2-handed for the weapon. So that also means that you don't have a, you don't have any sort of shield at this point. So that's something you want to keep in mind. So if you use a shield, you'll have to adjust for that. But right now, he does have the shield equipped. So if you don't want to have that burden of remembering that, you can make an effect for it, or just go to your inventory and then you take and you unequip the shield. So if you have a shield in your inventory, in this case I don't, you would unequip it if you were using a two-handed weapon such as a bow or something like that. But in this case I don't have to worry about it. So I have a whip, a net, and a maul. So the next thing is your fighting style. This is just a note basically. Same with this. And then your second wind is an actual effect. And then for your innate spells, you're going to get detect magic. So if you click on the bottom left here for preparation or combat, you can set up these groups. So I'm on combat and action. So this is detect magic. It's basically a spell that just puts a note on your character in the combat tracker. Your second wind is actually a healing. Your fighting style, if you're going to do melee sort of fighting style, you can use that. Or if you choose a different one, you can also put an effect on there or a note. In this case, it's set up for the actual melee. So if you did dueling, for instance, when you are wielding a melee weapon in one hand and no other weapons, you gain a +2 on damage rolls. Or you can be a great weapon fighting, or protection, or two-weapon fighting. Just depends on what style you want. So this can be archer, defense. So while he's wearing armor, he gains a +1 armor class. So that's the one I'm going to choose, is defense. So if I wanted to do that, I could make an effect for that. I'm not expecting you to remember this, but if I'm going to add a fighting style on here, I could. And I could just make a copy of this or modify this existing one because I'm not using this particular coding. So I can actually click on the magnifying glass. What I'm going to do is call this, instead of using the coding that's on there now, I'm going to call this defense. That's going to be my fighting style with a semicolon. And then I'm going to type AC:1. That's going to add armor class to +1 on my armor class. And then I'm going to make sure it's targeted on myself. So what that's going to do is when I activate that button, it's automatically going to add the +1 on armor class. If you don't remember how to do this or you're not sure, you can always go to the front screen here, go to your AC, which is basically up front here, and click on the magnifying glass. And what you'll see is an armor class bonus of 1 because of the leather armor. And then a dex bonus, so that's why you had 13. And then if you had any sort of adjustments here, you could put +1 in the miscellaneous column, but that assumes that you're using that particular armor class bonus. Or in the case like I've done here, is I went ahead and went with AC:1. So in the combat tracker, it won't show up until you're in there. So in other words, it doesn't change your character sheet. It only changes the math. So if I actually click on the fighting style, which I'm going to call defense because that's the one I chose. Then I click on that and it's going to add the bonus here in the combat tracker. So it doesn't add it on the sheet anywhere. It adds it on the math that's being applied in the combat tracker. So that's something you'll have to learn as you go. So basically that's what I'm going to be doing for this character is putting that in and making sure that he has that. Now for leveling up, when it comes time to leveling up, and your DM, or if you're making higher level characters, you want to go to the class and level, which is the start area up here on the top right, under by your proficiency bonus. It's a little magnifying glass, or it looks like a tennis racket. So if you go up in here and you click on that, it'll bring up this window, which allows you to select or bring up your characters, depending on what you're doing. So the next step is going to go to level up. So if I click on that, it brings up the character wizard again. There's a little arrow that allows you to click up, which will increase your level. And if there's anything that needs to be added, it will highlight here in this area. And it didn't. All it did in this case is it just gave me the option, or it gave me an increase in my hit point total, that sort of thing. And then if I had any class features or anything added, it would have. But it didn't in this case because it's second level. So we don't get our archetype until third level. So we'll go ahead and click on commit. And that will add the second level. It adds the bonus hit points here. So I got another, let's see, I started with 12. So I got another 10. Or I got an average of 10 rounded up to 6 plus 2. So that's 8. And then you add that to 12. So that's your 20 there. So 8 plus 12 is 20. So you, at second, third, fourth, any level after first level, you get an average of your hit points rounded up, plus your Constitution score bonus and any other bonuses you might have if you're a dwarf, let's say. That will add up. If you don't like that, your DM and you can work on that and roll for them and just manually change the number. You're not stuck with that. So the next time we level up, let's say for level 3, again, I'm going to click on this little magnifying glass. I'm going to click on level up. It brings up the character wizard again, and I'm going to click the up arrow. And that brings me to some choices here because I'm actually gaining a specialization. So I can choose one of these. So if I want to pick champion, I get improved in critical, remarkable athlete, additional fighting styles at higher levels. Or if I want to be a battle master, I would get combat superiority, student of war, those sort of things. And then there are other choices here. So I'm going to, or there's a champion too, which I think is the one I want. Yeah, so improved incredible. Yeah, I want this one. So I'm going to pick the champion. So if I click champion, it's going to add that to my character sheet. If I wanted to get any feats at 4th level, that might come up. So I'll do that shortly. So I'm going to go ahead and click commit. When you go to your abilities tab, you'll notice that your action surge was added at some point. Here's the champion notation here. You get it improved in critical. So what happens is at 3rd level, when you choose this archetype, your weapon attacks will score a critical hit on a 19 or a 20. So that isn't always automatic in Fantasy Grounds. If you go to your actions tab and you look at your weapons up here on top, the metadata, this actual hourglass, you'll notice that there are 2 different sections here. This is for critical. So I'm going to change that to a 19 instead of a 20 for both ranged and for melee attacks. And what will happen is if I roll a 19 on a attack roll, it'll automatically consider that a critical hit. So I don't have to manually deal with that. So that's the way you compensate for that. And this is also notated on your special effects and such on your character sheet. So now you have this whip, your net, and your maul. So if I click and roll an attack roll and it ends up becoming a 19 or a 20, Fantasy Grounds will automatically know to treat it as a critical hit. So when you roll damage, it'll actually roll the correct damage. It'll multiply it. So that's basically how that works. And your action surge is kept track of here because you are allowed to use those. So you can push yourself beyond your limits. On your turn, you can make 1 additional attack on top of your regular action or turn. Once you use this feature, you must do a short or long rest. Starting at 17th level, you can use it twice before a rest. So this says it's set up as 2. I'm not sure why, but if you go to the preparation mode, you would only click it on once for daily, or you would go rest because actually this says short or long rest. So that is now set up properly. Your second wind, it just goes away once you've used it. So it says you have a limited supply. Once you use this feature, you must finish a short or long rest before you can do it again. So it's at 1 daily. That's what I'm going to set that at just in case. These other 2 are constant or passive, so you can use that. Just leave that as it is. And that will set up your actions so that it works correctly and that it's also so that you're not abusing it or overusing it. Because once you click on one of these, it disappears until you get a long or short rest. So that's something that would be decided by your game master. So that's basically that. Now, these traits that are on here may or may not do anything for you mechanically. But if you wanted to code some of these, if you understood how to do that, you can kind of make these set up to where you would get advantage on charisma checks. And this one would actually just be a notation. So you can put that on as your effect here. So if you wanted to put for your, these are our racial abilities. So you can put it under the innate spells. So the Furbolg, his innate spell, it says you can cast Detect Magic and Disguise Self with this trait. So you can drag Disguise Self here. And actually, that doesn't belong there. I'm going to drag it in the actual area where the Furbolg is. So Disguise Self. Okay, and it says Wisdom is your spell casting ability. So if you click on here, you can change this ability score to Wisdom. That way it casts from the correct area. And once you cast either spell, you can't cast it again with this trait until you finish a short or long rest. So what you would do here is change this. You can change the metadata, so you can just say 1 use daily, and then it would disappear. So you can only use one or the other. So you'd have to know that, or you'd have to treat it that way. But at least you have both spells there so that you know what's going on. And then for preparation, you don't have to do anything for that. And you're in combat and action. So if you use this, the detect magic will actually just become, it'll disappear. And then once you've rested, those abilities will come back. So if I go to the combat tracker, go to menu, and then I'm going to go to rest. This only GMs can do this. So I'll go to short rest in this case. So it's supposed to come back on a until you finish a short or long rest. So I need to go and fix that. So if I go to standard and then I change this to rest, that way it actually works properly. So now when I go to do a short rest as the game master, it'll bring these back. So that's what that's for. So go to combat actions. Now for the menu, I'm going to go to rest and short rest, and it brings that back. So that's why you have different things set up as rest or daily. So it just depends on what the wording is on your actual sheet. So that's pretty much the automation for this particular character. I'm going to go ahead and level it up one more time. So this will be if you want to choose your ability score increase, or if you want to do a feat. So at 4th level, you get that option. So again, I'm going to bring up the character wizard through the class and level window. Here's the level up. And I go up to level 4. Now you can pick ASI or feat. So you have to choose which one you want. So I'm going to choose feat in this case. And then if you come over here to feats, you'll actually have a list of feats that you can choose from. Some of these are hard-coded in. Some of these are just role-playing. It just depends on what it is. So if I do tough, for example, that's going to give me 2 extra hit points. And then it's going to increase by 2 hit points every level successively after that. So that could be something I do. You can do a slasher. Let's see, what's the other thing here? There's mobile, moderately armored, Mage Slayer. So Mage Slayer, with your in a 5 foot, you can cast the spell. You can use your reaction to make a melee attack against a creature. When you damage a creature that is concentrating on a spell, that creature has disadvantage on the saving throw, and you have advantage on saving throws against spells cast by creatures within 5 feet of you. That's kind of a cool thing. It's like almost like having a Conan anti-magic guy. And then Weapon Master would be something that you can use to increase your ability. If you want to look at that, it says you increase your strength or dex scores by 1 to a maximum of 20. You gain proficiency with 4 weapons of your choice. The chosen weapons must be simple or martial. So I don't really need that. So I'm going to go back to this feat area. I'm going to choose something different. So here's durable. So what does that do? It increases your con by 1. And when you roll a hit die to regain your hit points when you do a short rest, the minimum number of hit points you regain equals twice that of your modifier. So this is more of a rapid healing. So I'm going to go ahead and pick that. I think that's a really cool trait. And it adds to your con. So let's see if it's going to do that. So it increases con by 1. Right now I don't remember what I had before, but if I hit commit, let's see what it does. So yeah, it was probably a 15 before that. As it says over here that your con bonus would have been added here. So I don't remember what I had before, but nonetheless, if I go back and watch the video, I can check that. But this is basically all the stats now. Your actions are back here. Your abilities are all notated here. So that's pretty much how this works in a nutshell as far as character creation. So it's not anything that is very difficult once you understand where things are. And it also assumes that you have content. So that could be something that could be something that you want to explore or create when you need to build a character using the character wizard. There are still some bugs with the character wizard. It's not 100% yet, so in the description of the video, I went ahead and added that link there in case you're having problems. Just report it there. If you go onto Reddit or into other places that are not directly affiliated with Fantasy Grounds, it's probably not going to be heard. So if you have any rants or problems, just put it up on the Fantasy Grounds forums and you'll get more eyes on it. You'll probably get more responses. Anyhow, take care, everyone. You have a wonderful week. I am going to have some surgery done tomorrow. I'll be out of action for a while, but I'll try to come back with more content. Take care, everyone. Have a good day. Follow our channel or sub to our Patreon, or just join the college, or we call it now the Academy, if you need any help or inspiration or any type of questions with Fantasy Grounds. We'll be willing to help you.